But did you find that you often represented Britain's interests in Bermuda more often than representing Bermuda's interests in Britain?
You do both. You do both. Yes.
And what do you do about conflicts of interest, where Britain's interests are conflicting with Bermuda's? Have you encountered that?
No, and well, if you do, you see them coming, and you say over the aircraft register. Bermuda's got a very large aircraft register, more than doubled in my time here. But if something goes wrong, it's not just Bermuda's responsibility. If a plane goes down, God forbid, that has been inspected but not properly inspected, because that's part of the Bermuda's responsibility as the country of registration, then the person who's got to take the rap, and in Montreal at the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, is not a Bermudian, because Bermuda has no right to a seat there. It's Britain because we are the sovereign country. And therefore you see this coming. You see, if you see a danger of that register not being fully manned, and you talk about it, Transport Ministry, and say with the Premier today, for a long time that was the same person, and say, look, we're in favour of Bermuda having this register. It's the biggest money spinner. I said, no, it's the most profitable activity since privateering. Last year it cost $9 million to run, and gross revenue was 19 million. So the profit margin is comfortable, 100% or more. Right. But if you're going to avoid us getting worried and then taking action to limit the register, you've got to staff it up. And so we have that sort of conversation. And sometimes they've been slow to staff it up, not deliberately, but because procedures for recruiting people in Bermuda are thorough and therefore take a bit of time. So if you can see these things coming, then there's no need to have that conflict between Britain's interest, which is in avoiding a contingent liability, I think they call it, i.e. a bill for millions of dollars if a Bermuda-registered plane goes to the bottom of the sea somewhere. And the Bermudian interest, which is in a nice little earner.
Can you tell us a bit about the differences between the personal styles of the two premiers that you served here?
Oh, I think you journalists have covered all of that ad nauseum. I don't think I can add much.
I don't know what your version of
the two of those. They're two very different people, obviously, from very different previous professions and backgrounds. I think with the present Premier, what she's done in trying to preclude some of the shortcuts, trying to block some of the shortcuts on procurement and associated activities, are very positive. This is really wearing her finance minister hat, but bringing procurement clearly under the Cabinet Office and making sure that everybody sticks to the rules, rather than as before, where the Transport Ministry had us sort of let out to do it their own way, which led to all the things we've read about repeatedly, the projects where the contracts were not transparent. Like that. I mean, that is good. That is good. It'll take a while to work through, but it is beginning to work through, and we'll see less scope for question marks. I'm not saying that those contracts were dodgy in terms of people benefiting from themselves personally, but there are question marks which leave that uncertainty there as just how decisions were made, decisions about contractors and the likes. So she's eliminating that, and she's introducing whistleblower, making it easier for whistleblowers, and the rest. And this is necessary, particularly in a place, a small community, where if a contractor, as we all hear about, but heaven knows if it's true, is approached by a senior government person and told they will only get such and such a contract in exchange for something, but doesn't want to go to the police because they feel that would be the end of their contracting company, then you need other ways of getting at it. And as I say, I emphasize that I pick up these stories, people come into here to tell me about them. I have no way of verifying them or not, but we all hear them, whether in the bars on Front Street in back of town or wherever. The stories are there. So if people who claim to have been approached for payments are not able to go to the, don't feel able to go to the police in their own interest, then you've got to get at it from the other end. And you've got to tighten the rules so that it's, there is a great deal of transparency.
So would you say that's the Premier's legacy then, of good governance initiatives?
The present Premier, well, she's a bit early to talk about her legacy, but it's certainly one of the achievements, yes. And, and a strong one at that.
What do you think the former Premier's legacy is?
I'm not sure. I think other people are better judge on that. There was a level of self-confidence that he spread around people. That may be important in the longer run, and whether that spread confidence to some parts of Bermuda. But I'm not the best person to ask on that.
Self-confidence?
Well, his own self-confidence
okay.
is something that probably rubbed off on some people, and increased self-confidence where it was needed to increase. I mean, off the top of my head, I would say that was, I think that's what people are hinting at, those people who still hold a candle for him.
Do you like doing business with him?
I could work quite well with him. Obviously, the whole Uyghurs business changed was a big obstacle when that came, but that was nearly 2 years into my time here. And even after that, there were other things we could work on. It was only a few months after that that the Bermuda played host to the Queen. And the then Premier and the then Cabinet Secretary were extremely good and very were the perfect hosts during that visit. And there were not any knock-on effects from the row that we'd had in June 2009 over the Uyghurs, when it came to the visit of the Queen in November.
Right. But how did it change? How did your working relationship change generally?
Well, I mean, he'd gone behind the backs.
Right.
He'd broken the Constitution, gone behind the back of the British government, gone behind the back of his own cabinet, but that wasn't my affair. That was for his own party to sort out. And that, you're bound to be more guarded after that.
Were you surprised at the escalation of violent crime, gang behaviour that occurred during your tenure?
Yes, I think we're all surprised by what started in, where are we, 3 years ago exactly, May 2009. And then there was a little bit of a lull after those 2 shootings on a Friday and a Saturday until December, or November, December, late in the year, and it really got going. And then early 2010 was pretty dire. I'd be amazed if anyone said they were not surprised. I think we were all surprised because we knew that the gangs were there, we knew that the drug dealing was the basis of their activities, but we had little premonition that they were going to start shooting each other the way they did. So
well,
yes,
Dr.
it was
Brown
a...
said, as you probably read, he said he saw it coming and he asked you for help.
He asked my predecessor and suggested...
Predecessor.
Yeah, he suggested my predecessor to bring in a whole lot of policemen from New York. Well, since that time, the Bermuda police and other authorities here have taken a lot of lessons from handling gang activities in Boston, New York.
Yeah.
Not sure they've been to Los Angeles, but they've been read about Los Angeles. And they talked to the FBI as well as the police in New York and Boston. And the anti-gang task force that's working here and has taken a good deal of its input from there. That is different from using American police with their very different legal base and their very different set of laws to which they're working. And so what we did instead with the police was to bring in a fair number of British policemen, most of them just retired, but specializing in violent crime. And not long after David Murfield, I don't know if you've met David, the Assistant Commissioner, he was in charge of these things in Birmingham, UK, as Senior Superintendent, when there was a horrendous black-on-black gang warfare and murder rate, and on his watch it came right down. So he came in as well. And these people didn't work separately, worked with the serious crime people of the Bermuda Police Service and started sorting out strong enough cases for the shootings to go to court, and that's what started to happen. And in the last 2 years, I think, pretty well 2 years, there have been something like 25, 26 gun crime trials, 20 of which have resulted in convictions.
What does it feel like being governor of one of the last remaining colonies of Britain? Because that's what it is, whether you call it British Overseas Territory or whatever, it's still a colony, isn't it? Does it feel a bit odd?
Well, I think it's bound to. In the 21st century, no one's holding on to bits of overseas territories because they want to. At least I hope they aren't in this day and age. But we, unlike one or two other European countries, are not going to shed them if they don't want to leave the fold. The Portuguese shoved theirs off when the dictator Salazar died in mid-70s, and poor Mozambique, poor Angola, poor East Timor went into civil war, each of them, as a result. So we will say, right, those territories, they're small, and for reasons of small size or for whatever other reasons, if and for as long as they want to retain the British link, then we'll do our bit from our end to maintain it. It costs next to nothing. In Bermuda's case, it costs virtually, absolutely nothing, and that's just it's a legacy of history, a responsibility of history. And we accept it, and we'll do it wholeheartedly. We won't be curmudgeonly or graceless about it. We'll say, fine, each 4 or 5 years we'll find someone who we think is suitable to come out and oversee that law and order and transparency side, and to work as closely as they can with the elected government of the day so that it works. And even when, as here, the elected government of the day, which has now the party in power here for the last 14 years, believed quite passionately that Bermuda should one day be independent, which adds a special element to it. But that's fine, because if and as and when they persuade the majority of Bermuda to say unambiguously that's what they want, then fine, we'll negotiate the independence they seek. But I stress, we're not going to force that issue either way, because we don't think that's the grown-up way of dealing with a very grown-up population, which has evolved in its ideas. And even if you only put it back to the time of full emancipation, or say put it back to the beginning of the present Constitution, that's 44 years, and that's a lot of time. And Bermuda's grown up, is a fully grown-up country which can decide for itself how it wants that future to be. And so in the meantime, of course, it's an unusual, internationally an unusual position to still have an overseas territory colony, call it what you will. But we accept that we will do our small part in making those small territories run. Bermuda's the largest in terms of population, for as long as people want want the status quo to continue.
Okay, but what's the reason for that stance? What's the rationale? I mean, you got the UN saying all territories should be decolonized from.
Not quite. The UN says self-determination as a principle is key, and we say self-determination as a principle is key. And self-determination can include a determination to keep yourself in the fold of a bigger country, or linked to a British country. Now, in the case of Gibraltar or Falkland Islands, it's clear why they're doing it, because if they weren't, they'd be taken over. Right. In the case of Gibraltar, we have a
reason for Britain not saying, look, you guys are old enough now, you should go independent. We don't necessarily want this contingent liability.
Because that would be patronising.
Is that the reason why Britain has that stance?
Yeah, that would be patronising. We don't want to patronise Bermuda. We won't patronise Bermuda. We'll say, Bermuda, you're grown up, you take that decision. All we ask is that if you change and you decide to go for independence, we need an unambiguous signal that that is the case. And then away we go.